we have with us Patty Scott. So I'm so excited to have this conversation with her. She's been on the program a couple of times before in the context of a group conversation, which was absolutely awesome and much better because of her presence. But Patricia is such an interesting person. And as we talk more and more, I think you're all going to agree with me that I was very much looking forward to having a conversation with her about, guess what subject besides hypnosis? About Patricia. We're all curious to know a little bit more about what makes Patricia tick, how she developed this profession, how she got into it, how, learn a little bit more about her. And I'm particularly interested in finding out, I know that you're doing talks at the IACT convention coming up shortly. I want to ask you about those as well. And just basically get to know you better. So before I start, I want to say that when I first met Patricia, some good 28, 29 years ago or so, I consider you like you're my big time hero, right? I think you know that over the years I've seen your work, I've taken your classes, you're like the goddess of hypnotism as far as I'm concerned. And when I have questions, I look up your website and all that kind of thing. But I remember one time, and this was many years ago, you told me, I have a feeling that in the future we're going to be doing something together. Do you remember that day? You actually made that
I don't
comment.
consciously remember, but it doesn't surprise me at all because you're giving me all these wonderful compliments, and I felt the same way about you. I've always been drawn to. Matter of fact, the other day I had a reason to call IACT headquarters, and IMDHA, of course, is connected with that. And as I was talking to them about the conference, I found out you're doing a luncheon on Sunday, and guess what? I didn't know that, and I signed up for it.
Oh yeah,
because I love to hear you speak. You make me think in ways that no one else ever had, and I remember the first seminar I ever went with you. It impacted me more than someday. Maybe I'll really get into telling you about how much it impacted me.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm glad. But yeah, so. Yeah, she's referring to the IMDH conference, which is the same. They're sister organizations. And as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, they both coexist as far as the convention is concerned, right? They run them in parallel at the same venue, right? I mean, it's the same.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Because when Robert Otto and Linda Otto took over IMDHA, which is, of course, is the International Medical and Dental Hypnotherapy Association, from Ann Spencer many years ago. And within less than a year, he ended up taking over the International Association of Counselors and Therapists. And that was right about the time I was moving to Florida. And he wanted to keep them separate because the focus of both organizations is slightly different. And he didn't want to all of a sudden just blend them together. So he created the Hypnosis Alliance, which now it's the umbrella group that has both of these unique organizations still intact, which I'm very happy about.
Me too. Yes. And I've been a member of IACT since the beginning. I've been an instructor for them. I think by now we've certified over 3,000 students over the years. I have not done classes in a while. Since the pandemic, we closed that school that we had for many years. But anyway, so you're correct. I'm going to be at this convention in May as well. I think I'm doing 2 classes or 1 class, I believe, on Saturday. I'm not sure. And the Sunday luncheon, I believe it is, which is like a talk and lunch and learn sort of thing. And I'm looking forward to that as well. I usually attend those every year, the lunches, because you always learn something. I was there last year. You learn something every time. Plus you get a good lunch. So, so it's an awesome opportunity. And this year I was honored, that they asked me to do one of those talks. So I'm very, very happy to do that. But I am in awe of the organizations, and that's perhaps a good place for us to start, just as much as I'm in awe of you, of course, but I absolutely love the organization that I'm more familiar with, because that's the one that I've always been associated with, is the IACT. And the Lavells started that back in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken, Gillian and Stephen, way back when. And I'm from that era when Gillian Lavelle ran the association. Then they transitioned to the autos. They've done a fantastic job. I love what they're doing. And I just have a lot of love toward that organization because that's how I was originally certified, and that's how I learned hypnosis. And my first exposure to the world of hypnosis was through an IACT event back in the 90s, in the late 90s. So it's one of those alma mater type of things. I just love the organization. What about you? What's your experience with the organizations?
Well, interestingly, Gillian Lavelle, by the time I got into the field, they had their split, with Stephen and her, and she took over IACT, of course. And she was from Florida. I had family in Florida. And I knew her from out in California at the conferences there. And when I found out I was going to be moving to Florida, of course, everybody said, I wanted to find out what the laws are here and if they're different from the ones in California and all that. So I had known her for a few years at that point. So I pinned her down and I said, let me, kind of brainstorm with you and pick your brain about Florida and the laws and things. So she was helping me to prepare to move here. And interestingly, she at that time lived a little bit south of where I am, probably about between where I am and where you are here in Florida. So I didn't see her that much. And coincidentally, within a couple of years, within a year, I had my own facility here in Palm Harbor, Florida. And coincidentally, she ended up moving back to the Tampa Bay area. And she actually worked out of my facility for a while. And I thought that was a great honor because I was like, wow, because by then she had sold the organization, the IACT organization, and she started, seeing clients out of my facility about the same time that my mother had gotten very ill. And then she ended up with Alzheimer's and had a lot of back and forth to the other side of Florida for me trips. So she would kind of help me to keep things flowing when I'd be out of town, sometimes for a week or two at a time. And it was just such a coincidence that I ended up actually with her working out of my facility. But I had known her ever since I started in 1992 because she was at that conference in California every year. And then I was going to 2 or 3 other conferences. I was going to like 4 or 5 a year back then. Mm-hmm. And of course, you see a lot of the same people, but a lot of them aren't around anymore also.
Yeah. Yeah. Gillian Lavelle, that is a very, if any of you listening to us right now come over and meet us at the convention, I would like, I don't know if Gillian's going to be there. Do you know if she's going to be there?
She's there every year. I'll be real surprised if she isn't. She sits at the banquet. She's always at the elite table,
Correct.
She's at the honor table, so to speak.
And of course, well-deserved. She's the original founder. And not only that, Gillian Lavelle is a person, I'm going to see if we can get her to do a program with us in the upcoming weeks, because she's a person that all of you listening to us need to meet. She was so instrumental in my development as a hypnotherapist, going back to the 90s. She was amazing. She encouraged me to write. She encouraged me to study certain things. She gave me opportunities to speak at her conventions. In other words, all of my professional development I owe to Gillian Lavelle. She would encourage me. She would guide me. She would tell me, do this, don't do that kind of thing. So she was always so happy to give of herself. I remember when my mentor passed away in 2011, she was the first phone call I got. She says, what can I do to help? I'll never forget that, And she didn't ask anything else. She asked, what can I do to help? I know it's a difficult transition, whatever, because we had a large school and so forth, First phone call, Gillian Lavelle, what can I do to help? And she has always been that person. What can I do to help? And I really, really admire her. And I see you in the same light. And this is interesting that we're talking about that. So Gillian started that organization, right, with Steve. Then there were some changes there. And eventually here we are. So this year, you're doing what, a couple of courses? Am I correct?
I'm doing a two-day this year, medical hypnotherapy specialty training. It's a certificate course in that people get a certificate of completion. I've done it every year since I got it approved through IMDHA a few years ago. And sometimes it's a 1 day, sometimes it's a 2 day. This last year was 1 day. This year I'm doing 2 days. And I bring in a colleague of mine that we used to work more together than we do now, but he has contributed a few pieces to that training as well. And I love training with him. He's Dr. Eric Rosen, and he's from the world of psychology. And he's another person that I met shortly after moving here when I started doing the trainings. through the organizations. He had been trained in hypnotherapy many, many years before, and early in his psychotherapy training in his career. And he had kind of let it go, and he always wanted to get back to it. So we met because when I first moved here, I was looking for an office to work out of. And then within a year, like I said, I ended up with my own facility. And we had met because I looked at an office where he had some space available. I didn't end up using it, but we got to be friends and colleagues. And so I started bringing him in to do little seminars and things. And so he's going to be doing the 2-day training with me. And he brings in some elements from the world of psychology, which I've done informal training in all my life as well, but he's officially, a licensed psychologist. So it's kind of interesting to hear, I think, from the unlicensed hypnotherapist point of view, and then from someone who is literally a licensed, mental health person that does hypnotherapy, because he uses hypnotherapy now. He trained with me I forgot to finish the story. So we connected, and then he found out I was doing trainings, and he said, I always wanted to pick back up on hypnotherapy. So he went through my certification training and became certified through IACT. And then in bringing him, introducing him to the people in IACT, because they were doing seminar conferences in Florida by then, and introduced him to the autos and everything. He started coming in to do some seminars on his own. So he ended up getting actually, I think it was Educator of the Year, like the year after I introduced them to him. So he's quite an accomplished, and he does hypnotherapy with pretty much every one of his patients, he can call them, because he's licensed. And unless they just don't want him to. And then he'll usually say something like, I remember him saying, he'll say, not to be sneaky, but he'll say, well, how about if we just use your imagination for some things? And it's like, where is that line between hypnosis and, official hypnosis and just using your mind to think about things in different ways? I don't see where to draw the line, frankly, but he's going to be doing that 2-day training with me. And then I also carry on and do a certification in medical hypnotherapy, which is a 4 weekends spread out. So they have a lot of outside assignments, which they tell me they love. At first they might not think it's going to be fun, but without exception through the years, everybody says they love the assignments I give them because it makes them better at what they're doing, and it piggybacks on everything we're doing in class.
So how does that work? You do it 4 weeks subsequent to the convention?
No, 4 weekends after the conference is how I do it now. Because they get that 2-day certificate. And what I do, anybody who takes the training at the conference for 2 days, they get that certificate of completion. But I invite them to take my training, which starts about a month later, within a month of the conference. And I just started doing that, when I started presenting this at the conference. And what I do is I deduct the entire cost of what they paid to take the 2-day training in this case. Or if it was 1 day, I'd take that part of. So if they want to get certified, I want them to be in this field and to get more training in the medical. I want to encourage them. So I just did that. The first time I did it, I thought, can I do this? And I've done it every year now for, a few years.
And the subsequent training, is it online or in person?
Nowadays, it's online. It used to be in person, then it started to be both for a little while. But in the last 2 years, it has turned into all virtual. Mm-hmm. And I love doing in person, but the world has changed, and I had to change with it, because even local people now tell me they want to do online training, So, and it works out beautifully. I was real skeptical about online training when it first started a few years ago. I was thinking, it'll never be as good. And actually, when COVID hit, was the first time I was forced to do the medical hypnotherapy online, because it was only 2 or 3 weeks before the conference when COVID hit, and everything shut down. And they were going to cancel. Yeah, they were going to cancel the conference. Now, one of my great friends, Michael Watson, by then had already been kind of ahead of the game doing some online stuff. And he went to the autos and he said, I think we can swing this online. And in a very short amount of time. And I was really skeptical, because I was going to be doing the medical. I didn't have time to redo or think, how am I going to do this differently? And then I would do it in person. And it forced me to get real creative. And by the end of the training that year, it was a 2-day training that year. And I think I did it by myself that year, I'm pretty sure. And by the end of those 2 days, I was absolutely sold. I said, oh my gosh, I still like to be in a room with people, but I realized, yes, this can be done online.
Yeah, I remember that year. I presented that year at the conference, and it was online.
It went almost without flaw. I mean, it was remarkable to me how well it went.
So anyway, this entire certification then is technically a hybrid, because you would start off 2 days at the convention in person, and then 4 subsequent weekends to be arranged, I suppose, or I don't know. Do you like 1 month apart, or how do you schedule that?
They're usually 1 to 2 weekends between, depending on holidays and things like that. The other thing, the first 2 days are extra training. They'll have some things that we don't even do in the 4 weekends. So people can sign up. The actual certification training is 4 weekends. So I can add people from the outside to join those people, whoever wants to come in. But like I said, I deduct their whole cost of the 2-day training. So they get 4 weekends of certification training in addition to the 2 days of what we covered at the conference.
Okay, but just to be clear, so if a person wants to get in at the very beginning to do the whole thing with you, the 2-day at the convention is the beginning, or the beginning is before the convention?
No, it's a separate 2-day training that is. It'll be a little bit of an overview of some things we will be covering in the certification training, but it's meant to be a standalone training, the 2 days.
Okay, a standalone.
The 4 weekends is the actual certification. It's considered 50 hours. And also, people have to already be certified in hypnotherapy through a reputable organization, not just a 2 or 3 day training somewhere. They need to, because we don't cover the basics of how to hypnotize and what's an induction. They need to know the basics going in.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. Now, I do recall, correct me if I'm wrong, that the IACT will certify people who have taken training elsewhere. They can take an exam and be certified through the IACT. Is that still true, or is that correct, what I'm saying?
That is absolutely true, yeah. Okay. As long as they have the adequate training, and like I said, from some reputable, well-known trainer or organization. And the same with my training, my medical hypnotherapy, they can get certified through my company, which is Up Hypnosis Institute. If they're not part of IMDHA, which is what I got it approved through after I'd been already teaching it for a few years, they can also, if they're a member of IMDHA, I also pay for their extra certificate from them. If they're not a member, if they're like, let's say they're with the National Guild or they're with one of the other organizations they were trained through, then they would have to join IMDHA in order to get their certification, but they would still get certified as a medical hypnotherapist through Up Hypnosis Institute, which now I've certified a lot of people, not as many as you have, obviously. You said thousands. I don't think I'm definitely not up into that number.
In basic hypnotherapy, not advanced, in basic.
Yeah, but the medical, they will get a certificate. If they're not a member of IMDHA, they will still, once they complete all the requirements, they still get certified as a medical hypnotherapist through the Up Hypnosis Institute. It's just they get that extra certificate that I actually pay the extra fee for if they're a member of IMDHA. And the reason I do that is because I want to encourage, again, people who are really have their heart in this work and want to do it. I want to encourage them to become part of the family. Because once you start going to conferences and meeting people, as you know, you start to be a part of it. And that's where you get a lot more learning. You get that camaraderie. Like you said, you have people you can call and kind of brainstorm with on something, or it's just a beautiful family. And the people are just so gracious and generous with their time, almost without exception. Since I've been in this field, people are so generous. Like you, you're a very generous person.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying, Patricia. And also, you mentioned the camaraderie. I think that for us professionals in the field of hypnotherapy, having another hypnotist to talk to at the convention in person, sit down, have dinner, maybe whatever, that to me is so important, because they get what we get each other, because we do the same thing every day. We have the same sorts of problems, the same difficulties, the same joys, right? So there's that feeling of being it's almost like a family. I think you mentioned that. And it's very, very, very soothing for me, at least, to be in that crowd, in that group. And if you are listening to us right now and you're interested in the profession of hypnotherapy, you have to be there, because you're going to meet the movers and shakers in the profession. You're going to meet people like Patricia, who is an instructor for many, many years, well established in the profession. So you're going to meet the people who are at the forefront of the profession. You're going to meet the Ottos. She mentioned them, Robert and Linda Otto. They run these organizations. So these are people that have influence in the profession. These are people who have been around for many, many years. They understand the profession. They understand the business. They understand hypnosis, right? Robert, I think, has been a hypnotist for since the 70s, I think, or something like that. So anyway, you're talking about people with an enormous amount of experience. They're there. You can meet them. You can shake their hands. You can ask them questions. So if you're interested in the field of hypnotherapy, this is the place you got to be. The first week, what is it, May 1st to 3rd, I believe it is?
May 1st through the 3rd is the Friday, Saturday, Sunday of the main conference, yeah. And then my pre-conference is the last 2 days of April is my right before the Wednesday and Thursday before the conference.
So before the convention?
Yeah, yes. And there's 4 post-conference extra classes you can take. Yeah. But the basic cost of the conference, including the banquet, I believe is the 3 days.
The 3 days. And all of those classes, or most of those classes during the main 3 days, even if you're not certified, my understanding is that you can attend those classes, because, am I correct on this one? I don't want to say something that's not correct.
Yeah,
I think that if you're not, the main conference, the main classes during the day, during the conference, even if you're not certified, maybe you are contemplating joining the profession. Maybe you've always wanted to be a hypnotherapist like Patricia, and come there, get to know the people, talk to the people, go to the classes, and then we can help you find whatever course is the right course for you to become certified, because they're going to be, all of the major instructors are going to be there. You can meet and talk to them and see whatever is the right venue for you to be certified if you're not already. So this is a great place to be. So I'm so glad that you're doing, all of this medical stuff is so important. But I wanted to get to know a little bit more about what medical hypnotherapy is. Now, I have to preface this by saying I also practice medical hypnotherapy. I'm a physician. I'm a professor of medicine. So I'm a little bit around that field. But I'm asking you these questions because I want to invite everybody listening to us to participate in this discussion, right? I want everybody to join this enthusiasm that we have for what we can actually do on a day-to-day basis. I'm a firm believer that if more people knew what we actually do, more people would want to do what we do, right? Do you agree with that? I mean, it's so fascinating what we do. And so from the perspective, I want to ask you a few questions. Number one, what is medical hypnotherapy? Because clearly it's not medicine. I mean, we're not practicing medicine. So what are we doing?
Yeah, the medical hypnotherapy for someone like myself, who is not a licensed mental health type person, or I'm not licensed in any of the medicine. So the main thing is, someone like me, we don't prescribe, we don't diagnose, we don't really treat. We're not hands-on, obviously, with people. We work as part of, I like to think of it as part of the medical team, that is the part that knows how to help people incorporate their unconscious processes and to tap into some of the resources that they have at the level of mind, in order to, there's so much research over, forever, but definitely the last 20, 30 years, now that they have the great imaging machines and everything, all the advances in medicine, it's just without question that the attitude of the person and the fact that they can think in certain ways and actually help their body to change things. They can in some level control their breathing, their heart rate, their blood flow, and different things that can be, to a certain level, be affected by the person learning how to think in certain ways. And again, I'm not a doctor. I've studied mostly a lot of psychology and philosophy and those kind of things, and hypnotherapy, of course, neurolinguistic programming, which I think of as a close sister to hypnosis. I think it makes hypnotherapy much more powerful for people who also learn neurolinguistics, because what they have done is condensed a lot of the things hypnotists were doing back in the 1970s and taken the important elements and refined them to be able to teach people more efficiently and quickly how to tap into all of these inner resources. And the mind is, like I said, the research is very clear that when you get the mind on board with healing, healing occurs more efficiently, more quickly, more thoroughly, more permanently in some cases. So it's really about getting referrals for someone like me and most of the people I train that aren't, licensed medical people, that they can get a referral from the medical doctor. It's just like any other referral. A doctor would send someone to a physical therapist, or they would send someone maybe for chiropractic care or something else. Sometimes massage therapy is even prescribed for people, right? So it's just like any other referral. And yet I think we're unique in that we know, again, the language of the unconscious mind. In other words, the part of the mind that's outside of our awareness, and it's in control of a lot. So I think this field is just perfect for helping people to incorporate that power they have within them to help themselves to heal from whether it's physical, mental, emotional, energetic, whatever, all the realms there are. And it's powerful stuff.
Yeah, I love the way you explain this, and as usual, and it's interesting. I heard you say something like, "I'm not a doctor." I heard you say that, right? And I would like to see if I can shed some light onto that idea. So I have heard people criticize us hypnotists because we are, according to the law in Florida, we're called lay hypnotists, right? So in Florida,
still using that term, huh?
They still use that term. It's in chapter 4, whatever the chapter is. Yeah, 485, I think it is.
485, yep.
Of the Florida statutes, yeah, lay hypnotists. And so we're lay hypnotists, which means that according to the law, you can just call yourself a hypnotist and you're a hypnotist. And so I don't want people to be confused. When you say, so anyway, so yes, you can call yourself a hypnotist in Florida, and we're all the same. We're all lay hypnotists, and that's great. However, to do what Patricia does, it takes the equivalent studying of 2, 3, 4, 5 doctorates. I mean, she's been studying this and practicing this for well over 30 years. And so when you go take a class with Patricia, she makes it look easy. And that's because she has been doing this for many, many, many years. When you're starting out, and I have seen this in students, they're starting out, I can take a X number of hours course and I can be a hypnotist, but then they cannot quite get the results that the more experienced hypnotists are getting, because there's a little bit of practice. There's a skill there that it takes a little while to develop. And we all take continuous education. I'm taking classes this year, so is she, so all of us, we're all taking classes. We're all learning. We're never done learning. And so when you put together all of those courses that we keep on taking year after year, we have so many hours of education, and that's why we can get hopefully better results, because we keep on practicing our craft, or we keep on honing our skills. We keep on practicing. Why am I saying this to you who's listening to us? I'm saying this to you because if you take a certification course, maybe a few weekends, depending on where you get trained, and then you try to work with somebody and they are not losing weight, or they didn't quit smoking or something, I wanted to compare that to what happens in medicine. A person goes to 4 years of college, then 4 years of medical school, then they become a resident, 3, 4 years, depending on the kind of residency, and then you begin to treat your patients, and it took a bunch of years for the person to write the first prescription. And when you take a few weeks course in hypnosis, that's just the beginning. So if you didn't get the results that Patricia gets, what I want you to do is to go back and keep on studying, keep on reading, take more courses, keep on practicing. See your neighbors for free, whatever it takes. You got to practice, because these things come with practice and skill and development and more education. In other words, a seasoned hypnotherapist such as Patricia is the equivalent to a person with multiple doctorates. This is what I want to impress upon you. So if you're not getting the results as a hypnotist, don't worry. Keep on educating yourself. This is what I want you to know. And if you're already a hypnotist, the other day I met a person at a meeting. He's a hypnotist as well, took a certification course somewhere, and says, well, I'm not sure that stuff works. And I understand that comment. I don't get upset. I don't get, I understand. The person perhaps didn't have the right training, doesn't have the patience to learn. But if you're already certified, come to the convention, talk to Patricia, get additional training, keep on practicing, and eventually you'll get the same or better results than we get. And that's our hope, by the way. I am sure I can speak for Patricia on this one. Our hope is that the next generation of hypnotists can do way better than us. I don't want my students to only reach up to whatever level I reached. I want them all to exceed me by far, obviously. I want the profession to progress, right? So if you're beginning in the profession right now, by all means, I want you to really exceed anything that we can possibly do. That's the hope, right? The profession has to improve and increase and so forth. So having said that, so you explained to us a little bit about what medical hypnotherapy is, and I so much agree with you. The influence of the mind on the body is undeniable. Any one of us know this for a fact, because if you're sitting around in your house alone at night, if you're listening to us and you've been sitting around, it's maybe 11 o'clock at night on a weekend, you're all alone, suddenly you hear a big noise outside. You heard a noise. It came in through your ears. It affected your eardrums. It went through the auditory nerve, and you got shaken up, and suddenly your heart is racing. What is that an example of? This mental phenomenon of hearing a noise and identifying it as some noise outside of the house produced a physiological response. Heart rate is up, respiration rate is up, cortisol levels, adrenaline spiked up, right? Physiological response. But it started off with a mental stimulus. So the mind-body effect is not even something we need to discuss. All of you know that this is true. Now, if you take that mind-body effect, if you take that stress response and you extrapolate that, if a person is chronically stressed and heart rate is always elevated, cortisol is always elevated, and stuff like this, you can see how that may not be healthy for the person long term. So then, when a person comes to a medical hypnotherapist, we have to reverse that, don't we? We have to get them to calm down a little bit. So whatever techniques we use to help them calm down and de-stress and get the heart rate, to normalize and so forth, what if we just talk to them in a soothing way? They will calm down. If they feel safe, they'll calm down. Well, maybe we can call that way of talking to them hypnosis, like your friend Dr. Rosen says, just use your imagination type of thing. So at a very, 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 very basic level, we're doing something that you're all already familiar with, except that we take that a little bit further, right? We push that a little bit further, because as long as we can talk a certain way and help a person relax, decrease cortisol, get yourself calmer, sleep a little bit better tonight, as long as we can do that, then the question becomes, what else can we do? And on that, I want to ask you, Patricia, what else can we do besides help a person calm down and feel better? What else can we do in terms of medical hypnotherapy?
Well, I think that's where we take it to another level, because it's one thing to have someone come to see you and you know how to speak with them in a certain way that makes them feel calm and safe and relaxed, and they feel great when they walk out the door. But then what? So I think the difference, the great thing that we can do to take it to that next level, so that, let's say, if their anxiety, if they truly have like chronic anxiety or some kind of a mental response to what's going on in their life, or what's just going on in their head sometimes, that is causing them some physical problems, then if they get referred to a hypnotherapist, we can teach them how to replicate that calmness, that relaxed, creating that, instead of the stress response, to be able to more quickly change in the way the mind is processing information, to, as long as everything is safe. Let's say it's a car that backfired and somebody has PTSD, and then they're like going to be upset for hours sometimes after, that we can help them to evaluate that more quickly and put it in a better context, a better perception, and we can help them to train in then the way to change that response. That's something that I started doing from the very beginning realizing, yeah, they can always feel good. If you sit there and you hypnotize someone, it's just a beautiful, relaxing state, the way that hypnotherapists do it. And yet we can teach them how to change their triggers that are making them continue with that mental program that is keeping them stressed. We can teach them how to interrupt patterns and reevaluate and realize, that was just a car backfired. Everything's okay. And I have all kinds of little things I teach my clients to shift their state. I call it pivotal response conditioning. And it takes time to train in, just like learning these things. Learning anything takes time and practice. And yet pretty quickly, the mind and body can learn everything's fine. I can let go of that. And once they practice it for a while, they can start to instantly, and I turn it into an instant state shifter that takes one breath. Because I realized, they don't always have the luxury when something hectic or somebody is really being obnoxious or some situation is bad. You don't always have the luxury to say, wait a minute, I'm going to take 20 minutes and go do my meditation. I'm going to relax myself and then I'll come back and deal with this. You don't always have that ability. So I thought it would be helpful to have something that we could train in, because it's possible, so that now the client has a strategy so that they can take a single breath, and in the hypnotic state, we can train in the new responses, the new physical, mental, and emotional response. And so that when they do encounter a difficult person, let's say at work, that they, with one breath, can shift and clear their mind a little bit, just enough to start accessing some choices of how to deal with this person other than freaking out or getting upset.
I love the way you explain, Patricia. You're such a good teacher, by the way, and I think that people listen to you once and they realize that. I mean, you're such an innate sort of teacher, And, I heard Patricia say that we can teach them, and then she said we can train them. And I wanted to pay attention to those two words, because there is an element of teaching there, and there's an element of training. And those are two different things, and they serve two different purposes. The person has to understand what it is that we're doing. But that's not enough, because if I simply teach you an idea by telling you what you should be doing, it's no different from me taking an obese person and teaching them to eat fewer calories. I can tell them, look, you should eat, 1,800 calories a day, and you should walk, 10,000 steps. I taught you what you should be doing, but that may not be enough for the person to actually lose weight. But they need to at least know what the game plan is. So we do some teaching in terms of, here's the game plan. But then we got to train that in. And here's where the magic of hypnosis happens, because when Patricia talks about training, in one breath, you can switch your state. This is where the real stuff is, because if we simply tell you to do that in one breath, it won't happen. But if you hypnotize the person and encode that in at the very level of the brain, in other words, that's going to happen. They're going to be able to switch their state in one breath. Listen, she mentioned PTSD, and perhaps a soldier went to war, and thank God for soldiers. They keep us safe here. Thank you, God. But what I'm saying is, if this person went to war, how did they get PTSD to begin with? They were also trained into it by having multiple events that I suppose are not pleasant for any human being. So they got trained into, and they got some reinforcement there, and this happened more than once, and eventually they reached a point where, now I have PTSD. I get that, right? So we have to do the reverse of that, but it doesn't take months or years, because we can use this tool called hypnosis, and we can access the very level of the mind where those emotions, or those emotional charges, as I sometimes call, are stored, and we can drain those charges. And so that's where the training comes in. I wanted to emphasize this, because when Patricia and I, when we talk about training, we're not simply talking about telling you what to do. It's like, we're not just training you to eat less so you can lose weight. I use this as an example. Of course, it applies to everything else. We're actually helping you eat less by hypnotizing you and getting you to eat less. And that's completely different. So this is why I told you that experienced hypnotists get amazing results. And so can you, if you practice your craft, if you do your trainings, if you keep on educating yourself, and if you keep on practicing, you will get better results than we get, hopefully. That's what we want for you. We want you to be better than us. So Patricia, that's a fascinating explanation when you say that a person can change their state in one breath. I mean, that's fascinating. I have seen this myself, and I find it fascinating because a person's life can change in one breath. Because imagine the alternative. They get upset, they hear a noise, the car backfired, maybe they pull out a pistol and God forbid somebody gets hurt, it can change their destiny in the case of, let's say, a PTSD situation, whatever. But in this case, when you train them, when you work with them and you get them to switch the mindset or the whole state within one breath, that can literally change their destiny. I think what you do is, I it's interesting. I've been doing this for 29 years now. This is my 30th year, and every day I was working this morning, and every day I still can't believe I get to do this every day. It's like, oh, this is so awesome, We actually get to do this every day. It's unbelievable. And I think that if you start doing hypnosis, you're going to get the same level of fascination that we have for this whole process. The fascination is not so much for what we can do. The fascination is what we observe our clients accomplishing when we see their lives transforming. I mean, we're like in awe of them, because they're able to accomplish so much. And you deserve to feel the same sort of epistemic pleasure to see your clients transforming as well. You just need the appropriate training. It's a skill that you learn and you train in. That's fantastic. So, Patricia, what else? Okay, so let's take one level deeper. So let's talk about something that everybody knows of and is afraid of. Let's talk about things like cancer. Do you ever see a patient or a client who comes to you and says, look, I have cancer? And if so, how do you take that? What do you do?
Yeah, I've had now, many clients. They're my clients. They're the doctor's patients to work with. And it comes down to the thing I love about this field is we're not here to fix anybody. We're not here to tell somebody, like you said, what they should do or what they ought to eat or any of that. We have a very unique and to me, magnificent honor of having people come to us because they want to feel better, live a better life, change some behaviors or whatever it is. In the case of the medical, something like cancer, the very first cancer person that I worked with was, because, it's one of those, a newer hypnotist, it's a little scary. Just like smokers were a little scary at first because, you get instant feedback. But the first lady that I worked with cancer was in the later stages of it by the time she asked me to work with her. I offered, and I remembered when I offered, because it was someone I knew socially, and I hadn't worked, I was pretty new to this. But I had a lot of great training, and I said, I found out this person, I didn't know her real well, but I knew her just casually, socially. And I had seen her husband out at some point. We knew she had cancer. And he said, yeah, she's staying at home now. And something inside him, he said, just offer. You need to use what you've been taught. And again, I was really a young hypnotist, young at the field. And he said, I'll ask her about it. And about a week later, I get a phone call and they said, she would like you to come and see her. Can you come to the house? I said, of course. So I started going to her house once a week for like the last couple of months of her life, at least. Might have been 3 months, I think. It might have been a little longer. And her goal, the first cancer, client that I had, that lady, her goal was not to try to heal her cancer. And thankfully, I had really great teachers in the medical side of hypnotherapy that told me my job is not to tell the client what they should want to do, not to change their, what they want. I can let them know, how I work and what I've learned and things. But she wanted to die with dignity. That was her goal. And she had been given the diagnosis. She was a very proud woman. I would go to her house once a week with my boombox back in those days, right? And she had this bedroom that looked like a Hollywood bedroom with the pink silk sheets on it. And it was just beautiful. She'd wear these pink silk pajamas, perfect makeup, perfect hair. Her nails would be done. And visibly, I didn't really notice her deteriorating at all. Week to week, she seemed fine. There was a point where when I would get there, she'd already be in the bed instead of in the living room waiting for me. So I thought, well, she's not getting around as well. But outwardly, she didn't seem to be. But I was just doing some generic, for my perspective, just relaxation, feel good things with her. She loved the hot tub at their place in Palm Springs. So she said, that's my favorite place I've ever been. I said, what's your place where you felt better than any place else? And instantly she said, I love the bubbles in the hot tub, the condo we have in Palm Springs. So that's where I would take her at the beginning of each session. And just my training told me just go on instinct, which is what I did. And a few months later, she passed away. And I remember I was surprised when her husband called, because she didn't look like she was deteriorating to me. She just seemed like she was fine. And it turned out that one of her children had flown in the night before from out of town. And the reason he flew in and her daughter had come, she was local, and they spent time together the night before, because the next morning the doctors were sending hospice into her home to start caring for her. So, and that sometime that night, after she met with her son and spent some hours in bed talking with her children, she chose, I'm convinced she chose that time to die, because she, again, very dignified lady. She wanted to die with dignity, and her domain was very, very private to her. And I'm convinced she chose that time to pass so that she wouldn't have these strangers coming into her home. And her husband let me know later that was her favorite time of the week, was when I would come to see her. And that just made me feel really good. I never charged her. They had a lot of money, but I never charged her. It was the most gratifying. And she taught me more than I could ever have paid a teacher in this world to teach me. And gave me so much. There's more to the story. There's some other peripheral stories that I don't have time to go into here. But the main thing to know is, like I said, we learn by doing. We learn by using what we know. But the reason I love this field above all others that I've studied and I've heard about and looked at is because we help the person to be empowered to do what they want to do, to meet their objectives and goals and their intentions for what they want. Her goal was to die with dignity, and she chose very, very privately a time and a place to do it so that she could have that moment of choice.
Wow, that is such a beautiful story. That's so beautiful.
Like I said, there's some other stories around that are part of the reason that I really decided don't listen to that voice and that critic in your head that's saying, I don't know if I'm ready for this. I don't know if I can do it. All those things we have. Because what with hypnosis we can do is we can quiet those voices, and we can help ourselves, because some of those voices, by the way, came from when we were little kids. We know that, and the psychology shows a lot of things. When you're a very small child, you get stuck in there, something like, I'm not good enough, or, whatever, and some of that lingers through. And I think part of what I at least intend to train my students is how to listen to the person, to what I call the subtext. I think that's where the magic happens with deciding how you're going to approach a client. It's not about the label, the diagnosis in the case of medical. It's not about those things. It's not even really about the symptoms that much. I think of it as, what's the meaning behind the words that I'm hearing from this client? What are their fears and doubts? What are their belief systems that might be supporting them not maybe healing from an injury as fast as the doctor says they should be able to? Whatever the issue is, it's listening to what's behind that. What's deeper in their language. Hopefully I'm teaching it, especially in the medical hypnotherapy. My goal is to teach all of my students, but in the medical is, how do you listen and perceive that sensory acuity we talk about in hypnosis, right? Get all your senses in a state within you so that you can see past that surface, and find out what's really inside there. What is driving what the problem is that the client's asking your help with? Because it's got to come from inside of them. I can't give it to them. And if we listen and ask the right questions, we can get a lot of clues, because their unconscious wants them to be healthy. That's the part of us that's designed to be in balance and, to have everything working. I call it according to the design. Some people say the perfect blueprint for health. In the hypnosis books, it'll say every person has within them a perfect blueprint for health. And I just, through the years, it has evolved in my language to say that perfect design that came in with the package. It came in with you into this world, right? And if we can tap into that and I think we can with hypnosis, to get their logical mind, which can be helpful about some things. We don't want to ignore that part. Got to have everything on board, right? But in the hypnosis part is where we can really reach those deeper levels of their part of their mind that knows every single cell and what's happening and what happened to them when they were 2 years old, and every part of their life. It has all the information. So that's when it gets really fascinating to me. It's like we're detectives wanting to elicit from the inner mind of the client. You know what's going on, and you know what they need to help themselves get past this. So help me to know how to guide this person. Kind of.
And I also think they know what they need as well. They may not have been able to express it before, but
that's what I mean. Inside of them is that part of them that does. Their conscious, logical mind they might have some mistaken opinions that's actually getting in the way that somebody told them. That'll happen sometimes. And
Patricia, I want to ask you a question. So in this example that you mentioned with this lady, evidently we all have to go one day, right? So her time came, whatever she chose or otherwise, but anyway, she left. My question is, have you ever seen other instances in which you believe that hypnotherapy helped a person heal?
Absolutely.
Can you give us some examples of that?
Yeah, and again, there's been a lot of different, people throughout the years. There was a lady that went through my training because she wanted to learn more about how to help herself with hypnosis, and she was also a client first. And she had cancer. She had some other. It's been a few years now, but I remember she had some other health issues as well. And her cancer, I seem to remember through the time that she, between working with me as an individual client and then wanting to learn, to be a hypnotist so she could really get more deeply into helping herself, when I wasn't around. And I think she moved out of the area a few years later, and she had regained a lot of mobility that she had started to lose, some mobility in her body. And it depends on what the client's goal is. It also depends on what's possible, right? We can't help someone to achieve what isn't possible. Usually, I think the conscious part of the mind, the logical mind of a person, limits that a little bit sometimes, or gets mistaken advice from someone, or is told by a doctor. I was told when I was about 40, 41 in California, I was just getting started in hypnotherapy. And in my early 40s, my eyes started having trouble seeing at night. And then it got to the point where I really couldn't see at night, and I started getting blurry in the daytime. And when I went to the eye doctor, the first thing they said was, well, when you're over 40, and what came after that. And thankfully I was already in this field and had some ideas about healing myself from my own experiences even before this. And it was like, when you're over 40, blah, 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 blah. And what he said. And my mind what it did with that was he's an expert. He may be 100% right, but I have trained into myself, when somebody says anything, this is the way it is. I instantly open up the possibility that they may be 100% right, or there may be more information that I could get that ends up being different for me. Maybe they're right with 99.999% of the people. Maybe there's something different with what's going on with me. And that's the way I approach this work. There's no cookie cutter. Not everybody's not the same. And I started doing hypnosis. I heard that a hypnotist had fixed their eyes. I didn't know how they did it. So I just started talking to myself in the way that I had been trained. And I was consistent, and I changed my attitude about wearing the glasses, and I would put them on and I'd smile instead of getting irritated. And 3 years later, I ended up getting a driver's license and taking the eye test with no glasses. And that was, let's see, what is this? That was about 29 years ago. And I had a small cataract removed about a year and a half ago, a year ago. Other than that, my eyesight is still perfect, and I don't wear glasses. So that doctor obviously was wrong about me, but that doesn't mean that's possible for everybody. But I think by having stories, by using hypnosis for ourselves, we can, because I was, again, doing it, studying it before I knew I even wanted to be a hypnotist. I was in show business for 20 years, and I used it for a lot of things, including recovering from a back injury that I was supposed to need a lot of surgeries for, and was supposed to make me unable to do a lot of things in my life. That was when I was 19. And I didn't know anything about hypnosis. But that's what started me on this track that ended up here, because I just, something inside of me said, I don't think he's right. And I don't know where it came from. And I started searching, because, you didn't question doctors. I grew up in a small town. They told you to do something. You didn't question it. You just did it. But this was so powerful inside of me that I couldn't ignore it. And I said, I'm going to just see what happens. I'm going to go a different direction. And like I said, ultimately, it led me to show business. I ended up dancing and doing bodybuilding and all kinds of things that I was never supposed to do, even with surgeries. I mean, it was a very bleak future they were painting for me. Yeah. And like I said, I don't try to talk anybody else into anything, but I do know we have an intelligence that we have available, and it's unmistakable when almost everybody has an experience like that, don't they? I think most people do.
I think so. And that's what I wanted to bring up to all of you listening to us. If you are a hypnotist and if you practice hypnotherapy, then you're very familiar with what Pat is saying, because you have your own experiences. Now, you might describe it differently. You might see different kinds of clients, and that's great. And this is why we do the roundtable, where we get a bunch of hypnotists together and we debate things and we have different opinions, which is awesome. And we don't agree on everything, which is perfect, because we all learn from one another. I think it's a very healthy debate. So you might be listening to Patty now, and you may have different opinions about how all of this work, which is awesome, right? But you do agree with all of us in the sense that, and this is what I want to say to those of you listening to us who are not hypnotists. I think what we can all agree on is that there is that inner intelligence, or that inner knowing that we all have. And that is what really guides us. And so you might be listening to us talk right now, and you might be thinking, man, I want to do that. I want to do what Patricia does. I want to learn how to do that. Follow the voice of yours. Follow that intuition. Follow that calling that you're having right now. If you're listening and you're going, dude, I don't quite understand what she's saying, but it sounds awesome. Dig into it. Find out more. Go meet the people. Find out what we do, because maybe you're going to be the greatest hypnotist, and maybe we need you in the profession, right? But you might be feeling called. You might be leaning in right now. She's explaining all of this. This sounds interesting. I'm not sure I believe it, but it sounds interesting. In other words, there's a part of you right there that is alerting you to the fact that, wow, there's something to this. I want to find out more. My suggestion is do what she and I did. That's exactly what happened to me. My story is different, of course, but that's exactly what happened to me. When my mentor started talking about hypnosis, I was leaning in. Whoa, what is that? Whoa, tell me more. I want to know this. He could do things that I wanted to be able to do. And I'm still hoping to get there one day, but he was also my mentor. And you know what? That's what got me into this field 30 years ago. It's like, okay, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to help people the way he does, and here we are 30 years later. And I think Patricia has her own version of that story, right? We all have our own pathways, our own version of that story. But in all cases, there's an inner calling, as I call it. You might be feeling that inner calling right now listening to us. My suggestion is don't ignore it, because I don't know of a bigger pain than ignoring your own heart, your own calling, your own voice, your own inner voice. Don't ignore it. So if you're feeling pulled into this conversation, reach out to Patricia, reach out to any one of us in the roundtable, and maybe go to Orlando, May 1st through the 3rd. If you go to Orlando, May 1st through the 3rd, and if you want to, I'll give you more details. Call me up or call Patricia up, any one of us, or look it up, iact.org. I think it's in the website. Look up the convention. You're going to meet the world's greatest hypnotists in one weekend. That's for sure. The greatest are there. All of the greatest are there that weekend. You're going to meet them all. shake their hands, talk to them, ask them questions, and find out what is the right path for you. Like Patricia said many, many times, we don't tell anybody what to do. That's not what we do. But I just feel so enthusiastic about the field of hypnotherapy, as I think Patricia does as well, that we just love to share. We love to talk about this stuff. So it's like, it is so awesome to do what we do. At least that's how I feel, and I'm sure she does as well. And all the other hypnotists I know, they feel the same way. They can't wait to get up in the morning and go do more of what we do. So if you're feeling enthusiastic about this, lean in and find out and get information. And maybe this is your future right here. So Patricia, we love your closing words. We love your wisdom. We all do. I do, and all the other hypnotists in the group, that we all love when you speak. What do you want to leave us with? What do you want us thinking about as we bring this to a close, this conversation to a close?
Yeah, just to take off on what you said. What I tell my students when they take training with me, I say, go to the conferences, go learn from everybody. I don't want them to just take, like you said, my style is my style. Each person's going to develop their own style. And I say, learn from as many different styles and different hypnotists, even if it's a style that you don't think would necessarily be something you would really be drawn to, you're still going to learn something, because we're all individuals like that. And like I said, there's one or two places, unfortunately, that I hear about from students in the medical that tell me that they went to this school and they said, this is the only way to do it. And I said, I don't talk down about anyone in this field, because I think everyone's heart is in the right place. I will recommend and say that if someone says there's only one way to do something, at least question it and find out from some other people if they have maybe a different way to do something. Because there's not just one way, and there's as many ways as there are humans, because we're all different. And the beauty of this field is that it's not about the technique you're doing, it's about the person sitting in front of you and what do they have inside of them that you can introduce them to and get them to activate to help them with whatever their problem or their challenge is. So I think just learn from everybody.
I totally agree. And the one thing I can share with all of you listening to us right now is the biggest, dare I say, payoff, is that, I don't know if that's the right word to mention here, but the biggest payoff I've seen in this profession is seeing the client walk away with a smile on their face. Sometimes they walk in crying, sometimes literally, sometimes internally, and they leave a whole human being. There's nothing like the pleasure of participating in that transformation. And to me, I thank God every day for this opportunity. I think it's a beautiful opportunity. I cannot imagine spending my life any other way than doing this, seeing that kind of transformation every day. So you might be listening right now, and you might be thinking, that is a good way. That is how I want to spend my life. And like Patricia said, there are infinite ways of doing that. You learn the basics of hypnosis, learn the basics, get good training, find a good teacher like Patricia, get the basic training. And once you're certified, then begin to explore what other variations of hypnotherapy are right for you and for your clients. But get a good, solid, basic training, and then explore what else there is for you. But again,
and Flavio, just quickly, I just want to make sure people know you don't have to be a hypnotist to go to the conference. Oh. There's people that go that are just curious and interested, and that's a good way to just find out. Get around people in this field. It's the most wonderful energy. And at the very least, you'll learn some things for yourself, which is how I started, just doing it for myself.
Yes, I love that clarification. In fact, if you're listening right now and you're considering the possibility of becoming a hypnotherapist, I cannot think of a better thing to do than to be at the convention, because in one weekend, you are going to meet the world's best right there in one room, in one conference, in one hotel room. You're going to meet everybody. So right there in 2-3 days, you're going to meet them all. You're going to talk to them all. You're going to take their classes, take their training, and you can, come Monday morning, you're going to be much better informed as to whether or not this is the right path forward for you, for sure, because you're going to meet them all and you're going to talk to a bunch of them. So Orlando, May 1st to May 3rd. So May 1st is what day of the week, Patricia?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Let's
Usually it's Friday. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? Yeah, it's always Friday, Saturday, Sunday. What am I saying?
Okay, so that means that...
It's my husband's birthday, so I got flustered when you asked that question.
Okay, so...
Yeah, it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah.
Friday, May 1st, Orlando, Florida. And you're going to meet Patricia there. I'll be there as well, and we can all shake hands and talk some more and continue this conversation, as well as all of the world's greatest hypnotists. They're all going to be there, so that's a great place for you to be as well. I'm looking forward to. When you get there, look us up. So come say hi to us, because we would love to meet you as well.
I'll be there for the whole week.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I'll also be happy to send you later more details on the website, whatever you can register, all of that stuff. But anyway, Patricia, thank you so much. As always, it's such a delight talking to you, talking with you, learning from you. Like I tell everybody, you're my huge teacher. I just love your work. I'm your biggest fan, I have so much admiration for you, and I'm so in awe of you for helping all of the people that you help. And I know, I hear from other people like the great work that you do. It is such an honor to have had this opportunity to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much, for real, for being here.
Definitely, my pleasure. My pleasure.
And I'm looking forward to more conversations with you. Thank you.